the feed industry grows, but the number of mills shrinks, which means everything's getting bigger. We do adopt more technology, but we also get, to some extent, rightfully so, a little more scared of anything that can break. Because if it does, we're in real trouble because there's no longer anybody down the road to say, well, hey, we're going to be down for half a day. Can you help? Because we've taken 3 feed mills and combined them into one, and breaking down is not an option anymore.
Welcome to the Feed Science Podcast, brought to you by 𝗦𝗽liche. I am 𝗟𝗶𝗀𝗃 𝗍𝗏, dedicated to bringing you the latest insights and discussions in the feed science industry. So please get ready to expand your knowledge and stay ahead with today's episode. So welcome everybody to the podcast today. It is a great pleasure to me to be hosting Dr. Fahrenholz, Associate Professor at North Carolina State University, as we believe it is the 100th episode of this podcast. And it's a great pleasure to have you here, Adam. How you doing?
Yeah, thanks very much, Carlos. I'm doing great. It's exciting. We've gotten to 100 episodes between the few of us doing the hosting duties, and so it's been a lot of fun. I'm glad we've made it this far.
Yeah, no, this is great. And so the funny thing is that how I got introduced to this podcast was actually when you interviewed me maybe a year and a half ago, give or take. And then it was exciting that I'm very gracious to be able to be now hosting also people. So this is great. So on that, and I know busy times for you and me, and this is always great, and exciting world of feed science. So, and feed industry. So based on that, I guess, I think for our audience, it will be good to kind of, I'm always, and I know you have worked a lot on that and given talks about it. So how the feed industry is playing now these days and where we're going. So, I think the audience will be kind of interested, maybe hearing a little bit about that from your perspective.
Yeah, sure. And one of the kind of fun things about this is, we've gotten to talk to a lot of different people, through this podcast, and really a lot of those conversations are representative of the conversations I otherwise have with stakeholders and with students and at conferences and meetings and all those kinds of things. The same sort of things keep coming up. And it's been one of the really neat things about this podcast too, has been the opportunity to talk to folks from a lot of different spaces within the, we'll call it the animal food in this case world, because we have talked to folks with pet food and aquaculture and livestock feed. And sometimes, I'm talking to somebody who's doing TMR mixing at a dairy, and the next time it's to a feed mill specialist of some sort working somewhere. Right. And a lot of the same stuff keeps coming up. Either related, a lot of it's either related to technology. So where we're going with the ability to optimize the things that we are doing in the feed industry, or it has to do something along the lines of keeping production going. How are we handling things related to inventories and parts and ingredients and making sure that things keep actually flowing, which depends on a lot of different factors. And then a lot about the actual people working in the industry and what are the people that we have working in the industry, and then where are some of those people going to come from in the future, whether they be at the operational level or at the management level or in the research and development, the nutrition, all of those spaces. And we've of course also talked a lot about nutrition as it's related to feed manufacturing as well, and tied all of those things back into it. And so, I think we're headed for a place where the feed industry will continue to evolve. Just like every other industry, we hear a lot about wanting to use those advanced technologies to optimize more sensors, more data collection, more artificial intelligence, and being careful how we use the term because everybody has a different idea of exactly to what extent artificial intelligence means something, right? And then knowing that we want to go in that direction, thinking about the wide range of facilities we have, some of which are 100 years old and some of which are being built right now, and then thinking about the people that we're going to put into it and do we train people on these new technologies, or do we need them to continue to be trained on, turning wrenches and doing very basic feed manufacturing and preventive maintenance and quality assurance things, because those aren't going anywhere either, and figuring out how to do all those things. And so there's always some new perspective on how we're going to do that. And so I think we're evolving. The speed at which we're evolving, I think right now, is one of our biggest questions. Are we going to evolve into some of these spaces really quickly, or is it going to continue to be kind of slower, based on kind of what our current rates of adoption have been for a lot of these things over the past few decades?
It's very curious, how things will play out in the future. But you're right. I mean, are we going to go through the speed that everybody's going in some other industries, or are we going to keep going to the common pace that we have? And I always come with the same doubt. And where are you going? But you're right. You mentioned a little bit earlier about all the different people that we have interviewed, and at least from my background, I learned a lot actually, from that perspective. But you said a lot of people are tending to put more into technology, and I never thought about what you said about artificial intelligence, what that means, but it also come to my mind sustainability in a way that also it means different things for many different people. So it's quite interesting how all this playing out. And then of course for our audience, please like us. We always appreciate it. And if you like our podcast today, give us the thumbs up there. So one of the things there, I mean, you're there more into the swine and poultry area, bigger companies integrated. What are you seeing there on the tendencies based on this, on technology? I know it varies depending on the size of the feed mill and how old it is and things like that. But what is your perspective from that region over there in the Carolinas?
Yeah, you're right. It certainly does depend on the facility, its age, its size, its production capacity, the company that's involved. I think what we see a lot of is a lot of interest initially in the technologies, right? And I mean across the board. I mean in improving automation, in data collection, in that optimization side. I also just mean flat on the equipment side. Bearings that are easier to keep greased or don't need to be greased at all. New improvements in the way drag chains are being put together, or screw conveyors are being able to be maintained. And so technology doesn't just mean, behind a computer screen or in a database. It also means on the equipment side. Everybody's always interested, right? There's no doubts. Wow, that's really cool. We should do that. And then we look at capital improvement budgets. We look at, what's realistically going to happen. And then we look at, the price of commodities. So as you mentioned, here in North Carolina, we've got a really robust commercial feed industry here, but the vast majority of our tonnage is driven by poultry, mostly broilers, breeders, and turkeys, and swine. And we're a huge state in North Carolina in all three of those spaces. We get to be really, really unique here because while we're not the largest producer in any one of those areas, we have more diversity kind of up at the top of, we make a lot of swine feed, we make a lot of turkey feed, we make a lot of broiler feed and a lot of breeder feed relative to what's going on in the country. Most of the other states and the few that make more production species feed than we do, we're about third or fourth on those kind of production species. With the caveat of I'm taking cattle out of it because it's a little tough to figure out where the feedlot and the TMR and the silage fits in a little bit on that, because it's not production feed milling, though it is still feed manufacturing. So
it's hard to quantify.
It's hard to quantify where that goes. So taking cattle out of it because of the huge sums of silage and corn that we put in there. If we talk about stuff being done in the feed mill, meaning the classic feed mill space, we've got a few states ahead of us that make some more feed than we do, but they're doing it because they're just real heavy swine, or they are just really heavy in, actually really that's pretty much it. It's really heavy in swine. And so we get to be really unique because we have all of these different production species that we're in. And so when we talk about what's happening with technology, we could be really interested in making some improvements in something, and then the price of chicken does something, or the price of pork does something. And because those things are so tied together, all of a sudden, maybe what we were going to adopt, we don't see adopting quite as quickly. Or the reality that faces everybody, commercial, integrated, multi-species, single species, whatever, we have a good idea. We're going to make some improvements, and we're really excited because we're going to do these new technology adoptions. And then something actually breaks, or we have a failure or a fire or whatever the case may be. And now all of a sudden that budget's all going into fixing that. Now, one of the things I have been really pleased to see a lot of facilities do is actually take the time when those kinds of things have happened and say, hey, if we're having to fix things anyway, why don't we take a look? But one of the other things that I have found interesting, and I'm not at all saying this is a bad idea, because in a lot of ways I fully understand why, especially in these very large production capacity type of operations, which could include commercial operations at the larger side as well. There are a number of people that have done this for a fair amount of time that have a lot of really good experience and that aren't afraid of technology, but will actively look at something and say, that's really interesting. And it seems that as long as it works, it would be really beneficial. However,
exactly,
what happens when it fails? As where I know this old, robust way of this piece of equipment having been designed is maybe not the most efficient, the most energy efficient way to do something, maybe the most sustainable, whatever it is, but I know it's not going to break. When I build my new feed mill, I'm putting that old tank of a design in because I know it's going to last forever, right? And we see that on manufacturing equipment. We see that with things related to automation when it comes to the type of hardware that we're seeing used. We see it in things like feed trucks, right? Well, here's all the cool new things that the feed trailer can do. And I've got some of our folks that we work with, like, yes, give me all the bells and whistles on the feed trailer. Like, I want my feed trailer to be the most, automated, cool thing in the world. And I've got others that are like, nope, I want hydraulics. I want hoses and hydraulic motors. And, I might go to air gates just because I have to, because my truck drivers aren't going to put up with having to go open the thing manually. But if they would, I'd leave that alone too, because it's one less thing to break.
Exactly.
And so I think one of the things we have a number of unintended consequences of things that happen as the feed industry grows, but the number of mills shrinks, which means everything's getting bigger. We do adopt more technology, but we also get, to some extent, rightfully so, a little more scared of anything that can break. Because if it does, we're in real trouble, because there's no longer anybody down the road to say, well, hey, we're going to be down for half a day. Can you help? Because we've taken 3 feed mills and combined them into one, and breaking down is not an option anymore. So I think that plays a lot of role into trying to decide what we said before, the speed of innovation. I'm really interested in this new innovative thing, but not until somebody else has tried it and worked all the bugs out of it. It's not happening in my facility. I can't afford to be down. So I think that plays a pretty big role in it too. And the bigger you are, the more it does.
Well, and I, as you were talking, I was also thinking, that in some way we also kind of do it in real life in a way, I mean, there's some technologies that the adjustment is not that much, like let's say cell phones or something like that. But, in some way, cars and other stuff, you go too high tech, then what happens is you live in a rural area and something breaks, you just have to dump the car. I mean, in some way, because everything is connected and disconnects very easily. So that plays a key role. I didn't think about it in that way, but it's also interesting. And of course, for our audience, subscribe to our channel, click on the bell to receive our notifications. But going back to the conversation, this week I was in an expo, in a show, and talking to one of the equipment manufacturers for sensors, for inventory control, and also for safety. One of the things that actually triggers their sale, they were very stable because of this fear in some way. Mm-hmm. The companies buying their equipment or the extra cost probably. but it was also COVID that they realized, hey, we cannot send people, because during COVID times specifically, you can get a lot of people working together. And then after that, we don't have people.
Yeah.
Automation technology in some way for some applications also help in that way. And that for me was very interesting. I mean, I'm always looking into how can companies get a very precise inventory control from feed ingredients, grain, which is always hard in a way, especially with different qualities. So talking to this company, I didn't realize how their sales kind of pick up because of that, but now they're more stable in a way. So.
No, that's a great point. I think we've seen that in some other spaces as well, but certainly anything that's a monitoring type technology that, different than some of the stuff I was talking about about things that are actually involved in the feed manufacturing equipment side of things, like we need this to work or we can't operate. Some of the monitoring things, if you have the financial wherewithal to invest in it, you can be an earlier adopter there, because if it fails, you go, or it didn't work like you intended to, it's a loss in income. It's a loss of money, maybe, but you can go back to doing it the other way until you kind of ramp up to understanding the better way to use it or get it to work appropriately or whatever the case may be. Although a lot of these things are getting really, really good today, and failure isn't, we're afraid of failure more than the actual reality of some of these things actually failing, because most of them won't when they're installed properly and everything. But anyway, something like those monitoring, whether it be for inventory or it be for a preventive maintenance or something like that, for the longest time, you could kind of do the math and do the ROI and say, well, it's going to cost me this much to do that. How much is it really costing me to send a person up and measure the bins? I mean, it's a pain, and it'd be really nice to have real-time inventory, but if I do the math, there's no way this pays for itself, right? Although you make the argument about better inventory control and it actually paying for itself, and a lot of these companies can show you that math, and you find out it's pay for itself a little quicker than you think. But then when you see some sort of worker reduction like that, right, where either because of something like a COVID, we can't have as many people around, or as we see now, just with the, difficulty in getting labor into the facilities, right, it's not as much in some of these cases of an ROI discussion anymore. I completely agree. Assuming you could get some person in and pay them so many dollars per hour, then you shouldn't have that. That's a cheaper way to go. But if you can't get that person in the first place, then now you're choosing between having that information, having that inventory, or having that quality assurance, having those samples to test whatever it is, and not, because you can't hire the person in the first place because you're having a hard time finding employees. Now it's not so much of a return on investment. It's purely a, do we need this information? Because this is the only way that we can be, sure that we're going to get it. And I think that comes into play as well, especially on, coming out of COVID, then that turning into the quote great resignation, and a lot more focus being put on, and not that this is a bad thing, but a lot more focus being put on work-life balance and doing a job that you really like. And we've got a generation now that's going to be a lot more comfortable, it appears, giving up on things, giving up on stuff in order to have the life that they want. And they have realized, I can live in a smaller house. I can not have as, many cable channels or streaming platforms or whatever. And because I'm going to have a lower income, but that's fine because I don't want to work like this, right? And we are in an industry that's a problem for, because it's hot or it's cold, it's dirty, it's noisy. The hours are probably not regular for most everybody from, operator up through management. So you really, really got to like it. And we've got people that really, really love it. And that's awesome. And we should do everything we can in our industry to hang on to those people that really, really love it, because getting new people in with that kind of a mentality of, well, what's a job that I find really, really chill, really, I feel really good about what I'm doing and it's not killing me. That we're in a bit of a tough spot there. And so we have to start looking at a little bit more of, the cost of this thing versus the hourly wage may be a little less of the calculation than just how many people can we actually hire as we move forward.
And you said it. I mean, it's difficult now these days from that perspective. And of course, that get us in. We have that people that like it, that don't mind, and they really love it because they like animals, they like the, whatever the case is, they like mechanics and so on. But how do we attract that people to get to know the fit industry? I mean, both of us, we work in universities. Universities, our thing is the students. And, and it's hard to recruit from that perspective, students to go to our programs for that, or people that don't need a university degree to work in the field mill. Where do you find these people? How do you do? I mean, the messaging is just tough. I mean, it's just tough. How do you do it? How do you make that people understand? Hey, I think it's a challenge, and it's greater as we move along, in terms that what you said, work balance. People want to work more with technology behind the screen, or do other things that are more fun in a way. Depends what fun means for everybody. But
sure. Yep. Yeah. I mean, I'm a weird person. Like, being out and having to take a pellet mill apart is fun to me. Like, if my staff calls me and says right now, hey, we need you to leave your office on campus because something's gone wrong and we think we need to take the pellet mill apart, I'm going, oh man, really? But in my head, really, I'm thinking, yes, I get to go take the pellet mill apart. Now, to be fair, for everybody listening, it's also not like, hey, we've got to get this up and running in the next 4 hours, or we're going to have animals go hungry. And so therefore we all have ulcers and stress about it because, we're at the university. So I get to play a little bit and it not be as stressful. So that, that's a fair statement. But no, I one of the things, to your point, and I've said this a lot to people, that I think moving forward, one of the things we're going to have to focus a lot on as an industry is professional development of the people that are already there.
Okay.
Because the idea of, with all those things we've just discussed, being it easy to recruit people in and keep them there, I think that part will get more and more difficult. People will come, they'll be there for, especially on the operator level, they'll be there for a few months and go, no, I don't want to do this anymore. Right. Or even some cases on the management level, I thought maybe this was like managing another production environment, but no, I think I'm going to go back over here to, a different type of manufacturing facility because this isn't what I thought. But then again, we also get, an operator that we hired who didn't know anything about feed milling and has been there for 3 years and has decided, like, I really love this. Like, I really have fun coming to work every day. Okay, we need to be, as an industry, when we find those people, doing everything we can to keep them there. And that's not just, paying them and giving them raises and all that, although that doesn't help, but it's, okay, what kind of training can we give you? What kind of opportunities can we give you? Because we're going to assume if you really like it, you may not want to just be the operator, though. You'd like to be a shift supervisor. You'd like to be a manager someday. If you really like this, let us help you grow in this role. I think that's going to become incredibly important for facilities and companies to foster that actively and not just respond when someone comes to them and asks, but be looking for those people. And then make sure when you identify them that you hold on to them. You and I are currently doing facilitation. We'll use facilitation of AFIA 500, right? There's a assignment in that where every person has to go and interview a mill manager. Well, to this day, the vast majority of people, when they say, what was your first job in the mill? There's a few that I was a mill management trainee after I came out of some sort of, collegiate program or something like that. I got a business degree. I got an ag business degree. I got a degree in feed milling. I got a degree in poultry, animal science, whatever. The vast majority of them, what was your first job? Driving a truck, sweeping the floor, running the pellet mill. I mean, the vast majority of the people in the management roles, That's still the case today. And I don't think it's going to change. I think the people that make it all the way to management, there will be a handful of them that come in through these programs of ours.
Yeah.
And that's great. That's fantastic. And I want to keep that going as much as we can. But I think a lot of them are going to be the people that stumbled into the feed mill and never left. And we have got to make sure that when we find those people, whatever it is that makes them want to stay in the mill, that we keep them there. I think that's going to be really, really, really important.
Yeah, no, I agree with that 100%. How can you make that? How can you compensate it? And like you said, not just money, somebody that is there. I mean, how can you make it better so they could grow? And that's the key at the end of the day. What type of training, what else, what other skill set you could develop and that could be helpful for the company, maybe in the short term, maybe in the long run, I don't know. But it is something that is always the challenging and specifically. I mean, some areas are I think more prone to have those type of workers, but some areas are not. It just depends a lot where you're also located and the type of industries you have around, and work opportunities and things like that. For our audience, of course, share the video if you learned something new today. We always appreciate that, and very important topics about feed mill in the future. The feed mill education, what is going to be there on that, and there's areas that are always going to become. Besides that I always see that we always have to pay attention. I mean, there's topics that you go, okay, the workforce, educate people, the workforce, but then also energy, sustainability, I see there. And of course, feed safety, how things come regulatory, and then of course their own company. So many things that are there always flowing around and connected to each other, and how things were evolved for the future of the feed mill industry. As you said a little bit earlier, less feed mills, more production. I mean, a lot of consolidation and growing of companies. So, and worldwide is the same. I mean, up to a point. I mean, there's still some places that are not like that, but I think we're in a. It's always a challenge, but at the same time, I feel it's exciting times to see how we can help on that. I mean, that's why we're here, I guess.
That's right, and. As I just said, I think a lot of what the future workforce will look like in the mills will come from all kinds of random areas that we can't expect. But at the same time, there's a reason we're trying to also give very specialized instruction to the subset of students that want to come to college and really specialize in these things too, because there's also a really good opportunity for them as well. Because, if they have that sort of background, they're going to be the ones that are going to be more likely someday overseeing not one, but, 5 or 6, feed mills, or being the director of operations for something, or they get a degree or a minor or a certificate or whatever in something specific like this. And then maybe they go off into the allied industry, or they go off into the nutrition side or something, but they can still converse with the feed milling side, which is really important, because we got a lot of people that don't understand what goes on in that big metal or big concrete box, but are supposed to work in that area. So, I think there's all kinds of opportunities to approach, as you said, the workforce, the production, the science, the technology, all of it from a lot of different directions. And that is what makes it exciting, because, we're doing something around here, and especially at the university, and, be in some meeting that has ostensibly, because I have other roles, for example, here in the poultry science department than just being the feed milling guy. I'm the director of extension, the departmental extension leader is what we call it here. So I oversee the extension things that happen inside the poultry science department, which means I end up in meetings that are related to animal welfare and nutrition and management and whatever. Yeah. And something will come up in one of those meetings, and I go, wait a minute. We could apply that in the feed mill too.
That's right.
Never thought about that, but we're talking about doing some sort of thing where we're looking at videos and collecting information on animal movement. And I'm going, well, we could do the same thing by analyzing truck movement and then having real-time data on, how quickly how backed up our logistics are, and therefore what do we need to do with the next trucks coming in or something. And maybe that could be done visually as well as it could be by somebody sitting there and entering something on a spreadsheet or something. Who knows what? Who knows? So it's like we've got all these people working on technology. We have people that stumble into feed milling and then find out they love it. And we have the ability to train people at a really high level if they come in and want to do it with us at the university level. And all those things are necessary. Every single one of them is important if we're going to have the technology and the understanding and the people and everything we're going to need to move forward in the industry. It's, we haven't, the way I kind of talk to people is we've been doing this for a long time. We haven't solved feed milling yet. And we never will. There is no solving all of it. There's always going to be the next problem, the next thing to figure out. And while at times that's frustrating, it's also exciting. It's fun. It's one big problem solving exercise over and over and over again. Yeah. And that makes it interesting. It's another thing from that assignment on AFI 500. One of the things you love about your job? Almost every manager's like, it's different every day.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I cannot relate to other industries that much, but you go to the beverage or, any other specific foods. Machines are so well calibrated and same ingredients, always very constant. So there's not that much challenge except for like sensors and things like that. But in the field, it's always something new. Things are changing, ingredients are changing, equipment and trends on the populations of the consumers. So exciting times, like I said, sustainability is one of those, and feed safety was like 10 something years and we're still into it. Yeah. So exciting times. And we hope that the audience takes this conversation to understand how that applies to their own location for the future. And either they're in the industry, production, equipment manufacturing, animal production, whatever the case is, how that applies to them. So in essence, so.
Yep, couldn't agree more.
It's time for our famous three. Deep in the jungle, nature holds the secrets to healthier, happier chickens. Science is unlocking those secrets with Optient, the revolutionary lighting innovation for poultry farming. By mimicking nature, Optient gradient lighting creates a unique floor-level lighting gradient that improves feed conversion by up to 4 points, slashes energy use by 70%, and keeps flocks calm and stress-free. That means better animal welfare and a more efficient farm. Want to learn more? Optient Gradient Lighting is now available exclusively through your local Valco dealership or email optient@val-co.com today.
Great. So, well, with that, I know we kind of went a little bit over here, but a great conversation here with Dr. Adam Fahrenholz, associate professor here from North Carolina State University. Any last comments, anything that you want to add, typical that we talk in those podcasts about, somebody that maybe in the feed industry, should be reading to keep up to date and all these issues that we've been talking today?
Yeah, honestly, if you're not, find the various newsletters and things that are free out there to subscribe to. You can get stuff put in your email inbox every day from World Grain and Feedstuffs and all the Watt publications. AFIA and NGFA here in the U.S. have their newsletters that they put out. Internationally and in other countries they have them as well. I'm not necessarily, and I'm like everybody else, I'm not necessarily advocating for filling up your inbox with just as much junk as possible. But at the same time, it's easier to scroll through the headlines and go, I'm good, and hit delete. Mm-hmm. Than it is to not have seen the headline at all and haven't looked in and gone, wait a minute, that sounds interesting. And so I think that's one of my pieces of advice. And honestly, I could take it myself more than I do as well. It's something I tell students and as well as folks in the industry is, find the time to read some of that stuff. Find the time to grab an old, an old textbook on, it doesn't even have to be feed. It could be something related to sampling or, whatever. Find some time to continue to learn, whether that be about something current or about some topic that keeps going. That's time that you should give yourself and that you have earned if you're in this industry or really any industry, to say, hey, I'm going to take 30 minutes and I'm going to increase my knowledge on something. And I'm not going to feel guilty about, doing that instead of this spreadsheet or this email or whatever, because, that's what I'm here to do, is to, move things forward. I'm not here to just maintain the status quo. I'm here to move things forward. And I probably don't move things forward if I don't keep learning too. So, pick your resource or resources and use those, and find value where you can. And, and it doesn't matter in a lot of cases what it is. It could be management resources. It can be production resources, scientific resources, some combination of all of those is probably the way to go when we get down to it. But that's, I think that's one of my biggest things, and something we talk with students about a lot, is obviously students in college, they're being fed that stuff all the time. So they get to do a lot of that, but, trying to tell them, hey, when you graduate and you leave, keep doing that. It's real easy to just do nothing but whatever comes across the inbox or whatever is the next on the to-do list. Carve out some time for something where you want to learn more about something. It'll pay off to you and your employer in the long run. So. Oh yeah, no, just fine. It's early in the morning, during lunchtime, or a break, or at night. But it's always important to dedicate that time to education, self-knowledge, gaining, whatever the best description of that could be. So great information. Thank you very much. And we're over here finishing up this episode. And with that, this concludes another episode of the Feed Science Podcast, brought to you by Wisenetics. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast so you can stay updated on our future episodes. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please leave us a review. Your feedback is very valuable to us. Until next time, this is Carlos Campabadal from the Feed Science Podcast signing off. Thank you, Adam, for joining us today. Yeah, you bet. Here's to 100 more.